All right, I'm back. But really, I never left. It's been like 1 second. Okay. I probably should have sharpened my pencil. It's looking pretty bad. Anyway. Moving along. Okay. So now we are going to dive in to David's sin. Okay. It's going to get depressing. I'm sure the weather outside will start changing. It'll probably start to rain. Okay. So here we go. David's great sin. 2 Samuel 11. Oh, turn it up to 11. Okay. Oh, I don't want to read this. So don't want to read this, but here we go. Okay. Okay, David and Bathsheba. Like I said, when you end up with too much power, too much money, too much time on your hands, you make bad choices when you're not following the Lord. Okay, so it says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, okay, David is a king, which means in the spring he should be off to war. Okay, it says David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. He sent someone else to go out and do his job, right? David's supposed to be out with his men as a king off to war. That's what springtime is, right? And he's not there. What a stinker. Okay. So he sent Joab. It says, in the whole Israelite army, they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. Where should David be right now? Did you guys figure that one out yet? He should be at war, okay, with his men. All right, so it says, because he wasn't at war, he's bored and he can't sleep, probably because he's not where he should be. Stink. Okay, verse 2. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. Should be at war. Now he's watching some naked lady on a roof bathing, which he should not be doing. That's gross. That's peeping Tom status, stalker status. That's not okay. Okay? And of course, what does he do instead of being like, oh gosh, what am I doing? I need to go inside. I have 9 wives, or actually maybe this was 8 at this time. I have a bunch of wives of my own. I should not be doing this. Obviously he's not. But anyway, shame on it. And of course he notices that she was very beautiful. Shame on him. He shouldn't be looking that closely. Anyway. And then it said, and then it gets worse. And David sent someone to find out about her. So he couldn't just leave it be. Now he's like, oh no, I need to know who she is. Shame on you, David. You should have been at war. All right. The man said, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. She's married. Hands off, buddy. Okay. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Not at war. Looking at somebody bathing. Sending for that person. Sleeping with a married woman. And he's married. Four things he should not be doing. Okay. Gosh, I don't like this story. Okay. She came to him and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I'm pregnant. Verse 6. So David sent this word to Joab. Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all of his master's servants and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home. So he asked Uriah, haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home? Uriah said to David, No, I'm doing a video. Okay, you can wait. Okay, you're coming with me. I'm locking the door. Here we go. Okay, hopefully that'll stay. Okay, goodness gracious. Oh, just when I'm reading a story I don't want to read. Okay. Anyway, here's what David was doing. David sent for Uriah because he was hoping that Uriah would go home, go sleep with his wife, and then when he was told she was pregnant, he'd be like, oh, yay, we're having a baby, not realizing that it's David's baby, not his baby, right? But Uriah wouldn't go home because he felt really guilty for leaving his men on the battlefield, so he wouldn't even be with his wife. He didn't want to do that. So David's saying, like, why didn't you go home? Verse 11, Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house and eat and drink and be with my wife? And surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. Then David said to him, stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that night and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. Okay, so David keeps trying to get Uriah to go home to be with his wife or whatever, and it's not working. David is the one who sinned. David is the one who made a mistake, and now he's trying to cover it, and it's not working. So in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down and die. So now he's like, well, if I can't get him to do what I want, I'm just going to have to kill him. So anyway, that ended up happening. Okay, it says Uriah the Hittite died. So Bathsheba, she didn't even do anything wrong. She happened to be bathing. The king sent for her. What is she supposed to do? Now she's pregnant with the king's baby, and now she just lost her husband. What just happened? If David would have been at war with his men, none of that would have happened. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. I'm just reading down. What happened? Some of the king's men died. Uriah the Hittite is dead. That's what they told David. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife. and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. Okay, so what ended up happening is they actually lost their baby. And that was their punishment. Now here's what's interesting is, so Samuel 11:3 and 4, his first sin. What I want you guys to write down is that I want you to write something before that. So his first sin wasn't Bathsheba. His first sin was not being with his men at war. So what I want you to write down for first sin, I want you to put not at war. That's number one. Not at war. And then you can put a comma, and then you can put slept with married woman. Okay. All right. So it says the first sin led to the second sin. In verses 15 through 17, David placed Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, in the forefront of the battle where he was killed. And then it goes on to David's repentance. And the reason why David repented was because God called him out on it. God used Nathan to do it. So Nathan is the prophet at the time. And so listen to what happens here. This is 2 Samuel 12. It says, the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and he grew it up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah. And if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now, therefore, the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. This is what the Lord says, out of your own household, I am going to bring calamity on you. Before your very eyes, I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you. And he will sleep with your wives in broad daylight. You did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before Israel. What ends up happening is one of his sons ends up sleeping with one of his wives. Blah. Okay. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. But because by doing this, You have shown utter contempt for the Lord. The son born to you will die." After Nathan had gone home, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife had borne to David, and he became ill. David pleaded with God for the child. He fasted and spent the nights lying in sackcloth on the ground. The elders of his household stood beside him to get him up from the ground, but he refused, and he would not eat any food with them. On the 7th day, the child died. David's attendants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they thought, while the child was still living, he wouldn't listen to us when we spoke to him. How can we now tell him the child is dead? He may do something desperate. David noticed that his attendants were whispering among themselves, and he realized the child was dead. "Is the child dead?" he asked. "Yes," they replied, "he is dead." Then David got up from the ground. After he had washed, put on lotions, and changed his clothes, he went up into the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went to his own house, and at his request they served him food, and he ate. Anyway, they mourn the loss of their child, and anyway, David and Bathsheba go on to have another son. But this time, because they were married, they had the son the right way. And that son was Solomon. And it says that the Lord loved him. And because the Lord loved him, he sent word through Nathan, the prophet, to name him Jedediah. Wait, what? Then God comforted his wife Bathsheba. She gave birth to a son, and they named him Solomon. The Lord loved him, and because the Lord loved him, he sent word through Nathan the prophet to name him Jedediah. Jedediah. What does Jedediah mean? The name suggests that the Lord's special favor rested on Solomon from his birth, and since the name also contained an echo of David's name, it provided assurance to David that the Lord also loved him and would continue his dynasty. Okay. Woo-wee. Okay. David's repentance. Okay, so David mourned, begged, didn't work, but he did end up repenting for his sin. Okay, so it says God used the wise preacher, Nathan, to awaken David. He did not mince any words. Note verses 7 through 12, right? Nathan lets him have it. David confessed and was forgiven in verse 13, right? Nathan makes it clear that God's not going to take anything away from him, but he will have to suffer for what he did. But the consequences of sin had to be dealt with by David and Bathsheba. The baby died. Record David's words in verse 23. So in verse 23, I will go to him, but he will not return to me. I wonder why I'm supposed to write down verse 23. But now that he is dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. Ooh. Okay, so David says, put it in quotes, I will go to him, but he will not return to me. You know what he's referring to? He's referring to David is talking about how he's going to see him in heaven again. So David will go to him, but his son's not going to be resurrected and come back to him. Ooh. Okay. It says, then Solomon was born to David and Bathsheba because they had done things the right way. God had blessed that. But because that sin was out there and because it had started, David continued to have troubles. Hi, dog. Okay. All right. So we have the remainder of the book of 2 Samuel is a record of David's troubles and heartbreak. His heartbreak was caused within his family Absalom being the greatest heartbreak. In chapters 15 through 18, the rebellion of Absalom culminating in his death. Okay, so Amnon and Tamar. That's a really depressing story. I don't want to read it. It's sad. You can read it if you want to. It makes me angry, so I don't want to. And then it says that Absalom gets really angry at Amnon because Amnon is a butthead, so he ends up killing his brother, which, yeah, he deserved. Anyway, so Absalom just kind of like goes off his hinges for good reason, but it kind of starts a downward spiral with him. And then Absalom wants to basically take David's job and is really naughty. And eventually it ends in David having to run away from his kingdom because Absalom is like out to get him. And eventually Absalom ends up dying. I want to say he gets impaled on a tree. He had like crazy cool, awesome hair. And it says Absalom's hair got caught in the tree. And it says he was left hanging in midair while the mule he was riding kept on going. When one of the men saw what had happened, what else? Something. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him while he was stuck in a tree by his hair. Ah! Okay. Anyway. Absalom. Okay. The rebellion of Absalom holding in his death. David's sorrow. 2 Samuel 18:33. He was really sad when his son died, even though his son was out to get him and tried to kill him and take over his throne. David had so much love in his heart that it still broke his heart that Absalom died. So it's 18:33. It says the king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Ugh, so sad, David's sorrow. Okay. And then this was the fruit of David's sin. According to 2 Samuel 12:11 through 12, it says read and underline. Write out the sorrow of David in 2 Samuel 18:33. So that's what I just read. And so what you can write is David wished he would have died instead of his son. Okay. So for the last lines on page 91, David wished he would have died instead of Absalom. That's sad. Okay. It says the record of David in 2 Samuel closes with his purchase of the threshing floor of Omon on Mount Moriah, which became the site of the temple. It was here, hundreds of years earlier, where Abraham offered Isaac. Ooh, interesting. That's a good historic fact for you guys. Okay, so the place where the temple was to be built, that Solomon was going to build, was at the same location where Abraham was going to offer Isaac. Okay, and we are going to stop there. Oh, so depressing.